Southampton's where all the posh cruise ships go. It's where the Titanic launched from, all that sort of thing. So there's always been a massive rivalry, and it gets quite ugly on Derby Day. So we're going to get 2 games between them next season in all likelihood. So
you mean that boat built by Irishmen but sunk by an Englishman? Nice.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Watch More Football with myself, Cam Clark, and Ryan. As always, you're watching us on the Genreverse Sports YouTube channel. You'll find our kind of back catalogue there, but you're probably here to watch us talk about the current Premier League round of fixtures, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Before we start though, why don't you check out our Genreverse YouTube channel as well? Our producer Kyle is going to bring that stuff up on the screen so you can see it. Basically, anime, we've got Wheel of Time, entertainment type stuff on there. There's going to be Andor reviews, reactions, that sort of stuff on there if you care to take a look. And if reading's more your thing, because writing's more my thing, to be perfectly honest with you, then I write a lot of news stories, reviews, things like that for our written website, which is lrmonline.com. So hey, check that out as well. Cut a big
Cam, I just want to point something out real quick.
Yeah, no problem. Go for it.
LRM just doxed me, man. The ad right there. I mean, look, everyone knows I live in coastal Virginia, so it's not a big deal, but it's funny. The ad is literally from like a local car dealership, and it's got the, First Team Subaru Norfolk right there. God dang it. Freaking AdSense or Google
Really?
Ads or whatever.
Really professional operation we got here where Carl's Google Ads is making it into the production. When is Andor coming out soon then, is it?
April, what is the exact date? It's 22nd, I think it is, isn't it? 22nd, yeah.
Yep.
Right, looking forward to that.
I write about this stuff all the time, but sometimes I forget things like dates, and like you can cheat when you're writing because you can just look them up on your phone. But nobody heard that. Anyway, a big round. We had a double round of Premier League fixtures this week, so we had set of midweek games. And then weekend games that have just been passed as well, and now they're moving into sort of Champions League fixtures before we kind of come back round next weekend again. So as always, we'll start off with our current prediction tables and how we all did. So over to you, Ryan.
Yeah. It wasn't a great week for me, I've got to say. I am really cementing I'm cementing myself as this season Southampton for sure. My combined total for the 2 weeks was lower than anyone's individual total for a single week. That's one stat. Kyle top scored with 19 points. He had a brilliant showing. He is now, even if I gave myself my 10 points back, he would still be ahead of me, and he has literally not predicted 2 weeks. So that's good. When we were doing the midweek fixtures, Kyle and Mick were totting up their scores, and I think Mick had briefly overtaken. I say Kyle and Mick, Cam and Mick were briefly totting up their scores, and I think Mick had briefly overtaken Cam, but basically their scores got swapped for the following week, so it's as you were basically. Mick's made up 1 point on you, but that's it. Dave has kept his nose in front. He scored 14 points. But he's miles ahead. It's a bit like Liverpool. It's like
11 points, isn't it?
Yeah,
or something
it's not
like
gonna.
that.
It's not. Well, it's 9. It's 9 points, but I still don't really. He scored exactly the same for both rounds. He scored two wins and
just
a draw
too
for
consistent.
Both. Yeah.
The only answer is Chelsea keep winning. I don't necessarily want to see that as a Newcastle fan, which we'll get into. But if Chelsea keep winning, then he'll keep losing points.
They have had a few wins. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, but I mean, they don't look like they're gonna. But what I wanted to say while we were doing the predictions is I wanted to shout out our viewer Carl McClatchy, who commented on our last pod. He is presumably a Villa fan from
one would assume.
But he took a bit of issue with our predictions last week. So I'll quote, "No one picked Villa at home against Forest. 7 straight wins in a row for Villa, and Forest clung on for dear life against United at the City Ground. Villa have a great home record even when we were playing crap." Oh, so he said so he is a Villa fan. Got your dead to rights there. "Even when we were playing crap, we at least did not lose. Villa should breeze past Forest 3-1. In the end, they only won 2-1, but they were 2-0 up after 15 minutes. So I've got to doff my hat to you, Carl.
Yeah,
good shout.
You were right. We were all wrong.
You can
I guess
do
we
my
get
prediction.
caught up in the Forest hype.
You're more than welcome to do my predictions for the rest of the season, mate, if you stick them in the comments.
I mean, you're almost guaranteed you'd catch Ryan for this one.
Yeah.
There's only 8 games left.
I mean, as I responded in the YouTube comments, I would dispute the claim that Forest clung on for dear life against United. We created a bit, but I was never convinced we were going to score, especially because Forest were quite happy to sit back and we were just lobbing crosses at the best centre-backs in the league. But I take the point. Yeah,
and it's Forest are in a good position though still, but now so are Aston Villa. So the game's on, and
Villa are on a good run.
It's that we're going to talk about tonight a little bit once we've kind of went through our teams of the week. Obviously, as we always do, we do have 2 sets of team of the week this week for the midweek fixtures and then the weekend fixtures. So we're giving it, because we are going to total these up and try and come up with our own team of the season. WMF team of the season at some point at the end of the season. So I don't know. Do you want me to go through them? Are you going to go through them? How
I don't know. If you want to take the first one and I'll take the second one, or do you? Yeah.
That sounds good. Sounds good.
Cool.
So I think I picked the majority of the people on this kind of one anyway, as we were kind of going along. In the back line, we've got Kieran Trippier, and I'll just talk about him and Livramento, who we've got left back together. Wasn't the best performance. Newcastle beat Brentford 2-1, an important one, but at home, an expected result maybe, and but Brentford made it difficult. The two of those just stood out. Trippier, I don't think it's been in anywhere near team of the week, and probably won't be again the rest of the season, but he just had an outstanding game. Just never put a foot wrong. And Livramento is kind of going from strength to strength, as we'll see, because he's in the next team as well. In terms of Forest, we've got Milinkovic in there, played really well. We could have had Murillo in there as well, but we kind of decided between the two, we felt Milinkovic deserved the nod this week, shall we say.
I thought he had the stronger game overall, and I think although Murillo did clear one off the line at the end, it was quite a tame shot that he cleared. I was more impressed with Milinkovic. I noticed him a bit more. So, yeah,
for sure. I should have mentioned Palmer on goals as well. He had a good game for Ipswich, because Ipswich did actually manage to get a result for once.
Just want to say on Kieran Trippier, I can exclusively reveal this is his first cap this season for Team of the Week.
Well, I was pretty sure it was, but the fact that you've exclusively revealed it makes it solid, right? So thanks for that. Konsa, Aston Villa, obviously, getting a win again, and he played pretty well, I felt. So yeah, that's our back line. In midfield, Tonali, I think might have been hitting towards getting in the team anyway, but winning the game with his absolute thunder absolutely meant no way, even though he admitted afterwards that he didn't mean it. I just think it's because he's such a humble chap. He doesn't want to embarrass himself by saying he did mean it, because to me, he looks at the goal, he hits it, there's no one there.
way back in sort of the early genesis of us talking about football together, back when we were on a forum on the internet.
Yeah,
Tom Cleverley scored a goal against Newcastle, which was a cross that happened to go in the net, and there was I was big on he definitely meant it. If that is a cross from Tonali that's found its way into net, who the fuck is he crossing that to? Because he just absolutely wallops it in a straight line into the top corner.
Well, he said it was 70% cross, 30% shot. So maybe he just got one of those brain fart moments where he kind of went to cross it and then thought, but I could do this, and just kind of get caught between the two. Who knows? But he basically scored from the corner flag, which doesn't happen very often from live play. So anyone is a game. So Tonali's in. We've got Caicedo for Chelsea. Chelsea haven't had a good week by any stretch of the imagination. But Caicedo, I thought, was the best player on the pitch for them in that game. I did watch quite a bit of that game. Yeah, I just thought he was the best player on the pitch. He looked completely comfortable. I actually scored a really good goal, but it did get rightly chopped off for offside. Not his fault, it was someone else that was offside, but I get it. But yeah, he just did an outstanding game. And then Yates for Forest as well. You were particularly impressed by him.
Yeah, I think first half in particular, basically his only job was to piss Bruno Fernandes off, and he did it to a T. And as a result, Bruno did not have his best game. He's fresh off player of the month for March, but he wasn't as effective.
I think there's an element, Ryan, keep Bruno silent in your team.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And there's no one else that's going to do anything. So I think it's actually a wise tactic.
He wound Bruno up. He wound Casemiro up. He broke up the play. It just, and that's why by the end of the match we were lobbing crosses at Harry Maguire, because we had nothing through the middle. Our normal game plan wasn't really working.
Yep. On our forward line, we've got Palmer, who I think was a bit of he kind of got an assist, so he set up the winner for Chelsea, but at the same time, there wasn't a lot of contenders for that right wing slot. He had a pretty decent game, so we kind of went for purely with the stats there. Asensio was much better on the other side for Aston Villa. He's been a really good signing since he came in January. Big pedigree though in terms of what he's done in his career. But,
I think it's very rare. It's very rare at the moment. I feel that sort of signing works out where you come in, you buy a big name player who's surplus to requirements at his old club, or you loan in a big name player who's surplus to requirements, and he just starts bossing it. Like United have tried that move quite a few times and it's never played out. So it's
worked in the past for them though, and like where you remember the things like the Zolas, the Hullets, things like that. But the Premier League wasn't quite as high up. As
it is a bit of a throwback. It is a bit of a throwback to that, where he's just so clearly a class above everyone else.
I know. But he's not. He's been very, very good and deserved. I think this is definitely not his first time in the team.
No, it's not.
This year. And then we've got Delap up front, who hasn't made it in much this season, but I think he is a very good striker. But he does play for Ipswich, so he doesn't get a lot of opportunities to get himself into the team. But
that's his 12th goal this season in quite a poor team. It's good going.
Yeah. No, I think he won't be there next year. I don't think someone's going to. It's just him picking where's the right place to go, though. Because I think if he goes to somewhere where he's literally not going to play, like a City, let's say there was talk that City want him back, right? Well, I just don't see the point of that. He would play 5 games a season. You know what I mean? He needs to go to somewhere where he'll play or come on as a sub quite regularly. I think not. Start.
He's definitely got a few options in the league. There's definitely a few openings in the league for him, and he's supposedly around 40 million. I don't know if that's a release clause or just sort of speculation.
I don't know.
Which are going down.
I've heard you in from Anders.
So the word was yesterday we've made him our top target, which I mean, without doing a deep dive.
Sure, he's ready for that.
Well, no, without doing a deep dive on United over the problem with us this week is we didn't have a striker on the pitch willing to take a shot, particularly against City. We created a lot of openings, but nobody was there in the 6-yard box willing to put something away. Delap is that sort of player. It's whether it's obviously whether he can handle doing that at United, but I wouldn't be against it. But I think there's other options that we could maybe look at before him.
Yeah, I don't know if he's quite ready for that jump. That's a lot of pressure. It was a lot of pressure for Højlund to go to Man United and be the main striker as well. I think you need somebody that's actually got a bit of confidence about them to say, "Yeah, I'm the man for this," and then possibly, he'd be there as a back. I mean, could get him as well, but I don't know.
Yeah,
see what happens.
We'll see. But then, so that's the midweek, and then so we go to this week, the weekend's one. So Dean Henderson in goal for Palace, who beat Brighton 2-1, even though they were down to 9 men for a little bit of that. He made some really good saves because Brighton created some good chances. We'll start at left back. We've got Tino Livramento in again, who's just had a very good week. Calvin Bassey for Fulham. He's really picking up his caps recently, isn't he?
He's doing well. I think he's progressing as a player really well.
I like him a lot.
If you think of the career he's had, he's kind of had a similar career to Van Dijk in terms of Holland, Scotland, England, smaller team. It might be time for him to go to a bigger team as well, actually, next season. But, Fulham fans will hate me saying that, but, money talks.
Dean Hyson, that was one of your picks. Bournemouth drew 2-2 with West Ham, so you need to explain yourself there, I think.
No, he just did an absolutely fantastic game, and I think he either scored or
he got
set one up as well.
He got an assist from what I'm seeing. Yeah, fair enough. And he is having a good season, and he is going to end up somewhere that's Bournemouth.
He is as well.
You would think. Chelsea, I think, are quite keen on him. And then we couldn't think of a right back, so I have chucked myself in at right back because deal with it, Kyle. I suck at predictions, but I can play actual football. So, no, I mean my seven-a-side Fat Club team. We won our league this year after we thought we'd bottled it a few weeks ago. We won 6-1 on the pitch last night. We were 3-0 up within 2 minutes, and I was playing right back, and I'm only bigging myself up here, but I marked the other team's best player out of the game so much that he had to drop back to a centre back just so we could get a couple of touches on the ball. So yeah, I'm sort of quite proud of that, as silly as it is. So and we couldn't think of another right back, so fuck it.
As you should.
Yeah. So big up the Red Bull life
for reals, much more fun than watching it.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Going into midfield, we've got Gomez for, is it João Gomez?
I believe so. Yeah, he had a very good game for Wolves. I think he was another player that they're saying won't be at Wolves next year. And will go to a bigger team. He's playing well, and I think he's playing in a poor team as well. You have to remember. I think he's a good player, and I think he's still quite young.
I've got to apologise to him. I've got to apologise to him though, because I took Cam's spelling as read. When I put him in the team, I've just Googled him. He's Gomez with an S, not a Z. So apologise for João. But yeah, we got Morgan Rogers.
Sorry.
Yeah, we got Morgan Rogers in midfield as well. We've put him in the midfield for. I don't really know where Morgan Rogers plays. He's sort of everywhere, isn't he?
He's been kind of playing left. Yeah. Like if they play like a front four,
maybe
and he kind of plays on the left, but we
maybe Carl
on the left. So.
Maybe Carl can tell us where he plays when he comments on this video. Big Carl McClatchy can tell us where he plays. But he played well against Forest. Got a good goal. And then next to him, Eberechi Eze, who obviously we picked him up last week because of his performance in the FA Cup, and then he tore Brighton apart as well on the weekend. Again, he sort of plays.
He always seems to turn it on at the end of the season, doesn't he? It's always like Palace always suddenly come alive in the last few games of the season, and he looks like a world beater. But then he has these spells in the season where he just kind of disappears, and Palace don't back up results as well. So
he's a really fun player to watch. I think if it was 10, 15 years ago, we'd be calling as a Barclaysman. He's one of those sort of players who are sort of really good when they pop up on Match of the Day every few weeks, but they don't really do much more than that. Bit sort of adulterapt maybe. He's better than adulterapt was, but yeah.
GG Okocha.
Yeah,
maybe not even as good as GG Okocha.
Yeah, we'll call him that.
But that might be because he needs to go to a different club, but we'll see.
Yeah. And then up front we've got Jacob Murphy, who got 2 goals against Leicester, and he's just continuing on his form, which you're taking credit for, Cam, because you slagged him off.
Yeah, slagged him off, and in that actual game, just 2 minutes after I slagged him off, he scored a goal, and then has consistently been scoring and playing well ever since. So, Newcastle fans, thank me later.
Yeah, and then the other wing, we're being a bit cheeky here. We've put him on the left, but he normally does play on
He
the
actually
right.
played on the right, yeah.
Pablo Sarabia, who turned the game around for Wolves because they were behind against Ipswich, but he got the first and then assisted the second. So fair play to
Notable
him.
mention to Brennan Johnson as well, who had a good game for Spurs. It was touch and go between
the only reason he's not in the team, I think, is because he didn't have the gumption to take a penalty off a loanee because he was on a hat trick. Spurs got a penalty and then Mathis Tell took the ball off him and scored it. And I just think if you've got anything about it,
maybe manager's instructions, I don't know. But I just decided to go with Sarabia because I think first time he's been in Team of the Week this year as well.
And then we've got Rodrigo Muniz up front. We thought about Mateta up there as well. But Muniz, I haven't actually seen it yet, but from all accounts, he scored a Bergkamp-esque goal against Liverpool.
No, because as someone who has actually scored, and I'm not even kidding, has actually scored the Bergkamp goal himself in real football, because I did actually do it at 5-a-side once. Anyway, it wasn't that, but it was really, really good. So it was a left foot flick, and then he turned that way and he come on to it. But he had a great touch with his knee as well to set him up for the shot. It was a very good goal, and he made Van Dijk look silly, which is always nice.
Yeah, that is nice, and Van Dijk has been made to look silly a couple of times in these couple of fixtures because he got mugged off by Beto a couple of times in the Merseyside derby during the week as well.
But Beto just can't shoot.
Yeah. But yeah, that's our team of the week for game week 31. So we've got 7 weeks left of that. But yeah, I mean, so I guess in terms of the big talking points. I mean, do we want to talk about Palace and Brighton first? Just sort of,
why not?
We get that one out of the way, and then get into the big talking point of relegation, the race for Europe. I just thought it was quite a bizarre game where you had the Manchester derby on Sunday, which was only a derby in name in terms of it had two teams from Manchester in it. There was no needle, no spark, nothing to that game. Whereas
there wasn't.
The Crystal Palace and Brighton is called the M23 Derby because that is the motorway from South London down to Brighton, and it's quite often gets the piss taken out of it as a sort of fake derby, but there is quite a bit of needle both from fans and from the players in this one. So we had Eddie Nketiah came on as a sub. 2 minutes later, he goes down in the box, gets booked for diving. I think it's harsh to book him for diving. I don't think. I think
that's the only harsh decision. I think there is a touch, and he does make the most of it. But I don't think you can call it a dive.
And then 10 minutes later, he just kicks a guy, doesn't he?
He kicks a guy in the chest, balls area. It's a yellow card every day of the week. It's stupid.
And then just on 90 minutes, Mark Gay, who was also on a booking, which I think was borderline as a first booking, no complaints. But then he goes and kicks a guy.
But the second one could have been a straight red.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It was worse than the first one. So for sure, he was. He's lucky just to get a yellow and a red for that one.
Yeah, and then. Jan-Paul van Hecke, he was on a booking as well, and then deep into stoppage time, he gets sold short by a pass. I can't remember who passed it to him, but he got really sort of sold short. Palace player kicks it up, and he's through on goal, and Van Hecke does what he has to do, gets in the way, gets him down, but he gets his second booking as well. That could have been a straight red for denial of a goal scoring opportunity.
I don't know. I think there was enough people round about him, and it was a bit far out for that.
Yeah,
but it was a definite yellow, and his actual yellow early on the game was a guaranteed yellow as well. So for me, the only decision they kind of got wrong was the first yellow for
diving.
I don't think it was.
But I think, with maybe the exception of Van Hecke, because obviously he was sold short by his teammate, they were just all really daft ones to give away. Because Nketiah gets booked for a high boot challenging for a ball. He does, he's just come on for a guy who's missing his ear because of a high boot challenging for a ball. So
it's I think it's, as you say though, the needle in that game was actually quite pleasant. See, I enjoyed it. I watched most of that game, and I enjoyed watching that game.
Yeah.
if you know what I mean, there was something about it. Whereas I really despised watching your Manchester derby.
Yeah.
An awful game.
Yeah, I just Palace and Brighton are two. I think it's got the good makings for derby because they're two enjoyable teams to watch. They've both got some fun players, and although obviously they could both potentially push into Europe, there's not a great deal of pressure on it from a results perspective. If either of them lose, they're still mid-table. It's still sort of where they are.
Yeah.
So I think people just sort of let loose. But I mean, Eze got 2 assists in that game. Minte assisted Danny Welbeck, who's now Brighton's top goal scorer in the Premier League. So just from a week, a week of football where we saw 20 games and very few of them were notable in any sort of way. I think that was one worth highlighting.
Yeah, for sure. I think so. And in terms of how this has left Europe, I think it's what that result did is it maybe you could argue it's took Brighton out the hunt for at least the Champions League places. I wouldn't say they're out the hunt for the other European places because other people can have bad results between now and the end of the season. There's some tough fixtures coming up. I guess the team that really took advantage of the situation over this last 2 fixtures was Newcastle. Granted, we were playing Brentford at home. Brentford have been getting good results away from home, so that was not an easy game. And we barely deserved to win it. Barely. But
you are a better
Leicester
team
game was a given.
Yeah, the Leicester game was
and we'll get onto that. And we'll talk about that a bit more. Yeah, the actual game itself.
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
I'm not going to talk too much about that.
Villa won out as well, so they will have leapfrogged Brighton because they got 2 wins. Brighton got 2 losses, so Villa are on in 7th.
It's good for us and Villa.
And obviously they've got
City drop points.
Yeah, they dropped points against United. They beat Leicester, but everyone beats Leicester. Leicester are sort of becoming quite synonymous with Southampton, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, Villa and Newcastle are really sort of they've got the momentum, and I think they've got the good atmosphere, the good vibes behind them at the minute. Where City, they are picking up results compared to sort of the back end of last year, but they just still aren't themselves. Forest are maybe slowing down. Chelsea, we just don't know which Chelsea is going to turn up. Villa and Newcastle, they just seem to be working at the minute.
I think the other advantage that Newcastle have compared to most of those other ones is we're not in any other competitions now either. So we only have the league to concentrate on. Villa must focus on the Champions League as well, and that's going to be big for them. It can affect Arsenal as well. Obviously, Forest are in the same boat as us, but both them and Man City are still in the FA Cup. So I still get that to go.
Yeah, I don't see the FA Cup playing that big a role because it is, the semi-final is 3 weeks away. It's one game. I think Forest in particular are in a good enough position where they can.
Depends who goes through.
They can afford, but Forest can afford an off day still. I think City can't, but I think Forest can still afford an off day.
I got a question kind of in this vein. I've heard you guys talk about this. The table's up on the screen, by the way. I've heard you guys talk about which teams will make it up to Champions League or Europe League or Europa League or whatever. But you'll say sometimes it's like 7, sometimes it's 8. Like, what determines how many? So
it's really complicated this year, especially because it's all to do with your what's the word, Ryan? The
coefficient.
So in Europe. Yeah.
So the Champions League is a European competition. So all the best clubs in Europe go into it, and depending on how good your recent history is as a country performing in that competition, that dictates how many spots you get for the next one. So England got 4 spots in this year's Champions League. However, English teams have done really well in Europe this season, so it's not mathematically guaranteed yet. But
all that they need is 3 more points.
Yeah.
So literally 1 more win for any team from England in Europe, or 2 draws, and that's it, mathematical. So it's pretty much guaranteed.
So that means they'll get. That means they'll get a 5th spot. Now, obviously, show in the Premier League table, until that is mathematically guaranteed, they can't say fifth is going to be a Champions League, even though everyone in football is taking it as a given. But you've then got sort of two lower tier competitions in Europe, the Europa League and the Conference League, and it all just basically gets pushed down. You then have the complication of, if you win the Champions League, you get a free ticket into it next year. If you win the Europa League, which Spurs and United are in, you get a free ticket into the Champions League next year. So we won't know
at the expense of maybe somebody that was getting in there because they were top 5. Then you've got the complication of that Newcastle officially get the Conference League place because we won the Carabao Cup, but Newcastle are aiming to finish above that. So then the Conference League table has to go to somebody further down the table, and so on and so forth.
Same with the FA Cup. The FA Cup winner goes into the Europa League, and all of the teams left.
But it's all worked out. You'll know by the end of the season roughly where everybody is to be.
Although
normally it's top 4 Champions League is the rule. Normally, it's never.
What we did have last season was that the league finished and Newcastle had finished in the Conference League place. United had finished out of Europe altogether because they were so far down the table. Then United went and won the FA Cup, which got them a ticket into this season's Europa League, and it pushed Newcastle out of the Europeans places. So you've got that sort of complication.
Wow.
And it could happen again. It could happen again where Newcastle finish 5th, get into the Champions League, and then United win the Europa League and kick them out again. So
that would be possible, but we would then get pushed into the Europa League because.
But it would be fucking funny.
But once you follow it, it's quite easy to understand. But that's it's a bit more complicated this year because you just. All the different scenarios that could happen by the end of the season.
It's kind of like playoff stuff in sports out here in the West, where sometimes you might have a spot, but you're sitting there waiting on other teams to win or lose to make sure you keep your spot. So I kind of get it. Yeah. Cool. Thanks.
Cool. The race for Europe. I mean, what's your predictions, Ryan? So right now, let's ignore Liverpool and Arsenal. Do we both think they'll be first and second, and that's just finished?
Yeah, I mean the only.
So who finishes in the next 3 for you?
Yeah, I mean the only thing with Arsenal is if they go through against Real Madrid, do they just turn their attention to that? Because the league. Yeah,
but would they really drop off enough to fall right outside the top 5?
Well, I don't know that they'll finish below the top 5, but they could slip below Forest.
So you don't need to get the places right. Just who's in that top 5 at the end of the season.
Yeah, so I think Arsenal and Forest will stay there, and I could see Newcastle and Villa making that up. Because I'm not convinced by either Chelsea or City. I just don't think they've got the quality there that maybe Newcastle and Villa don't have on paper, but they are just wildly inconsistent. That's the
thing. I think for us it depends on when we get to the last month, because that's when the last month May we've got some hard fixtures kind of thing. So I think we've got winnable fixtures up to that point. So I'm going to be confident and think that we'll get into it, but I actually think. I think Forest will do it. I hope they do it, actually. As long as it's not at our expense, I hope Forest get in. But I think City will be the other one, because I think if they don't get Champions League, it's such a big drama that I think the pressure will be on Pep and that he'll be on their backs. And, you must win every game between now and the end of the season. I think the result against Julo, he'll have tore through them for that, because they were poor.
Yeah, I don't think the result will have bothered him, because we've got a fairly 50-50 record in the league against City.
But it's a game that you expect they would be motivated for, though.
It's the performance. They didn't offer anything in that game at all. I don't think it was really weird to watch, and
people could say, Man United didn't offer much either. But actually, in this instance, with the pressures on Man City, because Man United had you've already beat them at their place this season, and you're kind of not fighting for anything. So,
and I wouldn't say we necessarily created chances, but we created opportunities where if we had a striker who was confident, we probably would have put them away. There was just we worked the ball into the box really well, but once we got into the box, we were just taking a touch too many, or we were cutting inside too much rather than just turning and shooting. So I think
was a very cool watch.
I'm quite annoyed that we didn't win that game, because I think we had the opportunity. I wouldn't say we did enough to win it, because we didn't, but we had the opportunity there. I just think, City. Yeah, I just think there's too many players there on their way out. Kevin De Bruyne is.
Listen, I'd love it. I'd love to see them not get Champions League and somebody else to get it. I would. I've got a funny feeling they'll just do enough.
Yeah. But yeah, that's how I see it. I'll plump for Newcastle and Villa to overtake City and Chelsea, just because it would be more interesting. I think.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. I just don't necessarily think it'll happen.
Yeah.
Again, we'll move to the complete opposite end of the table, and we've been saying for weeks that it's kind of done. The relegation fight's done, but this weekend it's kind of really, really done. So a couple of things happened. One, Southampton lost again, and they're now mathematically relegated. They are 22 points behind 17th place, with only 21 left to play for, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
I heard I heard it was a record earliest for them ever, or earliest ever in the league.
Earliest in the league.
The other big one is the worst Premier League season ever was Derby County in 2008. They got 11 points over a 38 game season. Southampton are currently on 10, and there's 7 games left to play. And
so they need a point to match it, and 2 points to break that record, because that's another record they don't want. They got another record this week that was Leicester. They got a record, so we're going to talk about them as well.
But interestingly, Derby were on 10 points at this stage of the season, in that season as well. So Southampton are sort of on a par. They did pick up a point against Palace, but yeah, they officially got relegated. It's the earliest the team's ever been relegated, and they've promptly sacked Ivan Juric, their manager, as a result. I don't really know what they were thinking with that. I mean, they were quite bad under Martin, but Juric has made them worse. He phoned it in massively, I think. Not that they're any good anyway.
Any favours going forward, but I think it does speak to a wider problem, because I think although it's not mathematically for them, you have to look at Leicester this week, especially. I watched them quite closely because they were playing Newcastle on Monday night last night, so it was a Monday night game. Probably everybody's watching it, and they are just. The effort that they're putting in, it's just so poor. You can tell in the players' heads they're gone. They're already, even though they're not mathematical, in their heads they're gone. Yeah. Newcastle, it was a poor game, but Newcastle were 2-0 up in under 10 minutes, 3-0 up by 30 minutes, and at that point there's Leicester fans leaving the stadium. There's 30 minutes, they've just got in, the game's still in the first half, and they're leaving.
Yeah,
because they know what's coming. And after that, Newcastle were actually poor, I would say.
Yeah,
they knew that, so they actually they let Leicester have possession and just used it almost like it's a training game. You have the ball, and we'll try and defend a little bit, and we'll swap a few players about so nobody gets too hot. So we just used it as a training game. That's not bad there.
The stat that you were going to mention in relation to Southampton, it's the Leicester stat, in that they're the first team in the history of basically English League football, so dating back to the
not just Premier League. This is
dating back 150 years. This record, they are the first team to lose 8 home games in a row without scoring a single goal. That's how bad they've been. And when we talk about Southampton having a historically bad season, Leicester are really sort of, if they hadn't picked up those few wins under Steve Cooper at the start of the season, I mean, I
almost feel it's not fair to tar Ipswich with the same brush. I think Ipswich just aren't good enough. But like those two teams, if I was a Southampton fan, and I know a Southampton fan, they're getting divorced, but my brother-in-law still officially at the moment is a Southampton fan, and he used to go down and watch a lot of games, and he just won't go this year because they're just so bad. It's like, and I do respect that. Like for the fans, like why would you go and watch that? You know, you don't. The team don't. If the team are not going to put any effort in, why would you go and watch them? So I don't actually blame those Leicester fans for walking out in 30 minutes because the lack of effort was just so poor from Leicester that what's the point?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean,
they could have cancelled the game, and I think Leicester players would all went, yeah, we'll just take the 3-0 loss. We'll all go home now. Newcastle would have went, yeah, we're happy with that as well. And all the fans would have been happy, and even the people watching it on TV would have been happy with that. So,
I mean, the one sort of, I don't know, positive maybe you could call it about Southampton going down is that Portsmouth look on course to stay up in the Championship this season. They're 4 points clear of the drop with a game in hand. So we're going to get a derby, and that is so for Kyle and other American listeners. So I live just north of Portsmouth. Southampton is about a half an hour drive to the west.
I live close to Portsmouth too.
Yeah. But they're two rival ports, so Portsmouth has got a big navy presence. Southampton's where all the posh cruise ships go. It's where the Titanic launched from, all that sort of thing. So there's always been a massive rivalry, and it gets quite ugly on Derby Day. So we're going to get 2 games between them next season in all likelihood. So
you mean that boat built by Irishmen but sunk by an Englishman? Nice.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, just people might know Southampton from that, but yeah. So yeah, that's that would be
but I think
that would be an interesting one next season.
The real story though is what we need is, and teams that are coming up from the Championship are behaving strangely in the last couple of years, and that they're trying to play in the same way that they did in the Championship.
Yeah,
but they're competing against players that are so far above their level that they just can't do it. We saw Burnley do this last year, and occasionally, like some team gambles, usually far too late, and then gets in a firefighter manager just to try and, But that's kind of when you come up to the Premier League for the Championship. If I was a manager, I'd be saying, right, see all that fancy playing football that we're doing last year, boys. It's not going to happen. We are 2 bikes or 4. We are playing it into the channels to the big man. We are playing the percentages, the set pieces, and we will take 0-0 draws all day long if we can get them. That's the way you have to do it.
I think as well, it's the recruitment because a big thing for recent promoted sides is they've spent money. They all spend £100 million, but they spend it on champions. They spend it on a dozen Championship level players because they've been promoted with loan players, for example. If they sign sort of a few older grizzled players who've been in the Premier League and stayed in the Premier League, it could be slightly different.
Here's the thing: Craig Bellamy was talking about this in Monday Night Football, and he was saying the players don't want to come, right? So the players, like, you're offering them a contract, and the contract would be, here's how much we're going to pay you. But if we get relegated, we obviously need to reduce your wages. We can't pay you that getting into the Championship. And the players go, oh, well, there's a good chance you will get relegated, so I ain't taking that risk. Thanks very much. I'll just... And they're saying that you just couldn't get anybody in at that level.
I mean, in terms of players that are out of contract that that promoted teams could look at, you've got Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Now he's a bit of an injury risk, but a promoted team
depends if a bigger team wants him.
You've got Olaina, who he's been quite good for Forest this season, but I don't think he's necessarily a top class fullback. You've got quite a few. Kenny Tetty for Fulham. He should be first name that people are going for from the promoted team.
Probably, but then other teams will be after him as well. Teams that maybe Everton will be looking at some of these people as quick options to bolster their squad and stuff like that as well.
But the issue is they're all spending this money on 20, 21-year-olds who are still, they're fresh out of, a Big Six academy. They're going to sell them on for double the money in a year's time. Nobody really, I think the owners are quite happy to pick up the Premier League money, go down, pick up the parachute payments, pick up the money from the sales of those players, and none of them actually want to create a squad that can stay up. And I get. Obviously, it's a hard sell, and it will be, especially because we're going to have 2 seasons in a row now where the promoted teams go straight back down, so that it's going to make it more difficult. But I just think teams need to be a bit smarter about it. So
they do need to be smarter, but they need to be smarter tactically as well. You know, you can't be going into the Premier League and saying, let's play it for the back, like Southampton were doing early season, or like Burnley were doing last year, and they're literally giving teams goals. You know, Sam Allardyce, if he was dead, would be rolling in his grave looking at some of these things, but he's quite alive.
I mean, in terms of who's looking like going up, so you got Leeds top of the Championship at the moment. They've got Daniel Farker as manager, and he is.
But they'll sack him, won't they? Because that's what everybody does. Sacks him.
Yeah.
As soon as they get to the Premier League, and then
he's quite a stodgy manager. You've got Burnley in second. They've got Scott Parker in charge now. He hasn't done it in the Premier League previously. He hasn't done it in the Premier League previously, but he's made Burnley very good defensively, which was their main issue last season.
So maybe, and
then you've got Sheffield United under Chris Wilder. Now, Chris Wilder, I think, is completely off his rocker, but again, he's quite a conservative manager.
Sometimes
if they could marry that with some Premier League experience, especially at the back, and proper Premier League experience, I think they've potentially got a
I think these clubs should be looking at Big Jamal Lascelles. I think he'll be fit by then. I don't think he'll stay at Newcastle just to play cup captain and stand in the sidelines.
They need to be trying to get a couple of good, 28, 29-year-olds, maybe even people in their early 30s who've been around the block, who can lead the gaggle of kids that they've got bringing up with them. Otherwise, we're just going to have the same pattern repeating, and it's going to be the same clubs going up because they are too good for the Championship, but they're just not good enough for the Premier League yet.
Yeah, but you need to have that. If you look at the models of the teams that have done it, the Brentfords, the Bournemouths, the teams that have come up, you've got to have the right model to come up, and then you've got to fight tooth and nail every week for every point. Even if it's fighting for that 0-0 draw, you've got to do that every week if you want to stay in the Premier League. And I just feel like it's not been there.
With Brentford, they were quite a physical team.
Yeah.
They were defensively solid, but they ran at you for 90 minutes and they didn't give you a moment's rest. And that's how they managed to bloody a few noses, and they made games unpleasant for teams.
That's what you need to do. You need to be an annoyance.
The last crop haven't got that, and I think it is because they're signing so many of the younger players and so many flashy players and the attacking players straight out of the academies and all that sort of thing, and they just haven't got that grit to them. And that's
maybe they need a few Championship players that are a bit older and a bit more experienced and have touched the Premier League a couple of times and are maybe ready to kind of take the next step. I know what you mean, but it needs that mental strength. But you hit the nail on the head. You have to be an annoyance. You have to be that team. Like when Brentford come up, you're like, oh, those guys are annoying to play against. I mean, and that's what you need to be.
Even Ipswich this season, I think we were all interested to see how Ipswich got on, but that is more to do with McKenna's tactics rather than anything to do with them. But Southampton and Leicester, it's just you go into a game against those two and it's like, this is going to be the easiest game we're going to play all season.
Yeah.
And you can't, regardless of what quality you got at disposable, you just can't have that. It's just a recipe for going straight back down. Anyway, so we'll hope for it's a different prospect next year, but I think we're looking at very much those 3 teams are going straight back down again this year. Yeah.
Certainly Southampton and Leicester. I mean, Ipswich could still pull off a miracle, but
Ipswich are 12 points behind, and there are 21 points to play for. So if they lose a couple more games, they're gone.
Wolves are getting more points now than they ever were at the start of the season as well. Wolves are picking up points here and there. Not smashed every week. So
I heard earlier today that since Vitor Pereira came into Wolves, they're 9th in the form table, and he obviously came a bit before Christmas. So I don't expect any great things from them next season, but they have. They are as much a reason why it's not a question anymore, because they've managed to pull away quite well, I think.
Yeah. And I guess that takes us on to our kind of predictions for our next set of fixtures. Guess my team plays your team. That's the kind of
That is
for us. Maybe
it's the interesting one. I mean, we've all, well, apart from Kyle, we've all gone for a Newcastle win.
I know.
I just think the last 2 games we had a bit of momentum going into the international break, and for whatever reason, just the clinical, well, I wouldn't say clinical, but just the attacking instinct has gone out of the front line. It was, in quite a worrying way. But also we've got the Newcastle game is right smack in the middle of our 2 legs against Lyon, which is what the whole season is riding on. If we go out, that's our season done. Basically, we haven't got anything else to play for. We're not going to get top half of the table. We're out of the cups. So we've got players back, but I don't.
It's at our place as well. It's at St James's, so and
frankly,
we should be favourites.
Frankly, even if we were playing well, you guys are a better team. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think so at the moment. Yeah. But
the other interesting one.
Like that, yeah.
I mean, we had a bit of a discussion in the group chat about why my prediction scores were so bad, and I basically said it's because I look at the fixtures and I go, oh, that one could be an upset. Oh, that one could be. And I do that for half of the fixtures, and none of them happen. I've done it this week for City versus Palace, because Palace absolutely love going to the Etihad and doing a smash and grab and scoring a worldie. So I've gone 3-1 Palace in that one.
I hope you're right.
Else, yeah, you guys have gone City. Carl's gone for a 1-1 draw.
I went City just to win though, because I wouldn't be that surprised. I wouldn't be like pure shocked. I'd be like, well done, Ryan. I should have thought of that.
But my issue is I take all those. I wouldn't be that surprised, and I go for all of them, and they never happen. And that's why,
So sometimes you've just got to go with what's the more likely results to happen for sure.
Bournemouth versus Fulham
stands out.
Bournemouth versus Fulham. They're sort of teams that are sort of inconsistent.
Fulham, it's more important now for Fulham than Bournemouth because of Bournemouth's poor results, actually, because Fulham have leapfrogged them. If Bournemouth beat Fulham, it kind of leapfrogged them back again, and the 2 of them are kind of out of Europe, I would say.
I'd say they're both inconsistent, but actually Bournemouth have on quite a lengthy winless run. So but they're 2 teams that on the day can play good football, and it could end up as a good match.
It could be any score, that one. It actually could. You wouldn't be surprised at any result there. Oh well, any last words this week, Ryan, from you?
No, that's all from me. Yeah.
Great. Guys, obviously you left comments. If anybody leaves a comment next week, it's something that we will bring it up the following week in the show. We'll have a chat about it. If there's any questions or anything you want us to cover or just talk about, please absolutely do let us know. Just once again, thanks very much for watching us, and if you like the show, we would love likes and subscribes, because that helps the kind of whole algorithm thing, and it's just nice to know that people are actually watching you, and even if it's only 10-15 people out there that are kind of watching you sometimes, or 50 watching you sometime, it makes what you're doing feel worthwhile. So thanks very much to everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.